Syria's information minister says the transition government is committed to media freedom following decades of censorship under the Assad dictatorship. The acting leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has said introducing a new constitution and organizing elections could take as long as 4 years. He says Syria needs time to rebuild its legal system and hold a census to facilitate a legitimate vote. Some Syrians have expressed concern over that time scale. Let us now speak to Karam Shaar. He specializes in Syria's political economy and is based in New Zealand. Thank you so much for joining us. Karam, people in Syria face so much uncertainty in their future. Do you think it's possible for the many different stakeholders to have a voice in this process moving forward?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think the outlook is very uncertain because the interim government at the moment is sending Syrians very mixed messages. On the one hand, they argue that the future will be inclusive. But on the other hand, the interim government is taking some serious steps towards consolidating its grip on power and the way they are actually ruling the country. For instance, just today, there has been new changes to the Syrian syllabus that remove any references to evolution, for instance, that talks about Islamic Sharia as being the reference for law. But this is according to the syllabus, not the constitution itself. Now, I think on the other hand, if you listen to the interim leader, he's actually talking about a national dialogue conference that will include multiple actors. He's talking about over 1,200 people. So what that is actually going to look like is still very unclear. What worries me the most is a conference that is done in a paternal way, where the interim leader brings everyone in their individual capacity, as they insisted, not as institutions or as NGOs or political parties, and then makes them feel included, without actually allowing them to have a genuine say in what's going to happen. And it looks like this is the most likely scenario, because what we're hearing at the moment is the conference will last for just 2 days for 1,200 people. So practically no one will get a chance to say anything.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the political economy. The majority of the population in the country is deeply poor, especially after years of conflict. Has there been any immediate economic impact as a result of the fall of Assad for ordinary citizens there?
Indeed. And I suspect conditions to improve further still. So the Syrian pound has appreciated since the new interim government took over. This has reflected on a reduction in prices in the market. Access to electricity has improved slightly, but I actually think living conditions will improve, contingent upon one key aspect, which is sanctions, which are still unclear. There are different types of sanctions imposed on the country, and the future for those is not clear. However, what I also think is going to happen is the country will need an initial push from other countries. It will need funding to, for example, fulfill the promise of increasing public salaries by 300 or 400%. As they have said. And I think such an injection of cash will come, and it will come from either Qatar or Turkey or a combination of both.
Very interesting. Sanctions and financial support for the governance of the country. Karam Shaar, director of Karam Shaar Advisory, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's now speak to Zedoun Alzoubi. He is a governance and peace-building expert. Thank you so much for joining us. You were recently, good evening. You were recently in Syria, where you met people from different groups. What are people worried about?
Well, actually, people are worried about everything, although I could see happiness everywhere after the toppling of the regime. But one of the major things that actually nowadays are of major concern for people is elections, constitutional committee, the so-called now the national conference that is supposed to be held in a couple of days, but no announcement. However, I want just to stress that the period of 4 years does not sound unreasonable given the status of the country. Just let's look at the fact that we have right now around 12 million people displaced, millions without documentation. We don't have like birth certificates, like IDs. It's a country that has lived under dictatorship for 54 years, but more importantly, under one of the ever bloodiest civil wars in history for 14 years. So expecting building up a legal system, restoring documentation, doing census is somehow very reasonable to be held in 4 years. And actually, it's not easy to hold it in 4 years. Let's think of Tunisia as an example of the Arab Spring. They took 2 years to write their constitution. And when I asked them, they said, oh, we rushed it a bit. In a country with so much tension, with so many factions, with many divides, with so much like destroyed infrastructure, I don't expect things to happen quite quickly. But my concern is, how do you run this period? That is the major concern. Yes. Yeah.
I think it's a great point. I mean, we have certainly seen the devastation of rushing too much into elections in the Middle East region, especially with Iraq. But nevertheless, al-Sharaa has shown no inclination toward or liking of the democratic process before this. So does anyone trust that he is committed to eventual free and fair elections during this few years you're talking about that is necessary?
I can't trust that we will have a free election in 4 years. Why? And to be very frank, the word democracy has not been said by any of the officials of the current government, be it Sharaa or any of his team. And to be very clear, they are using 3 terms: institutions, justice, and rule of law. No one said we will have something like participatory approach. No one said we will have democratic approach. That's what concerns me, actually. We don't have my concern, my worry is that, and many people's worry is that, will we have inclusive process towards building the constitution, towards having the right legal system for elections, for freedom of media, for freedom of expression? That is what we should focus on. Now, many people are actually concerned a lot. And I met in Syria people from the far right to the far left. Like meant people, bureaucrats who were with the government at one point of time, media, and I met also civil society activists, pro-human rights activists, and they all share the same worry. Will we have an inclusive process? Will we have an inclusive governance system from now until we build up a constitution? If the constitution is built in 2 years or 3 years or in 4 years, if it is not built in an inclusive process, then it doesn't matter how long it takes. At the end of the day, Assad, the father, when he established his constitution, it took him less than 1 year. But it was one of the worst constitutions in the history of Syria. His son used the same constitution and amended it in 2012 in a span of 3 months. But what was the result? The result is a constitution that excludes everyone, that is undemocratic, that is actually just pro-dictatorship, the dictatorship he and his father were.
Zedoun Alzoubi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.